The mere mention of hell sends shivers down our spines. The thought of eternal damnation and torment is enough to make anyone's blood run cold. But what if I told you that there were ways to make your stay in hell just a little bit more bearable? Yes, believe it or not, there are certain things you can do or have that will make Lucifer himself welcome you with open arms. And trust me, you don't want to go anywhere near him with his flaming sword and all. Welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be going over 7 terrible things that will get you sent straight to hell. Before we get started though, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you're always the first to know when we post new videos. With that said, let's jump into it. Number 7, heresy. This one might seem like a no-brainer, but it's worth discussing nonetheless. Heresy is nothing more than the denial of a widely held belief or the questioning of established doctrines, especially in a religious context. In simpler terms, it's basically saying, I disagree to things that are supposed to be taken as absolute truths. Now, while this might seem like a harmless act of free thinking to some, it's actually considered a capital offense in the eyes of the Church, and by extension, Satan himself. Why, you ask? Well, think about it. If everyone started questioning the validity of religious beliefs without any proof, the entire foundation of faith would crumble. And let's face it, the powers that be aren't exactly thrilled at the prospect of losing their grip on the masses. After all, they've spent centuries building up these institutions, and they're not about to let some heretics come along and tear it all down. So if you happen to be someone who finds themselves doubting the teachings of the Church, it's probably best to keep it to yourself. Otherwise, you might just find yourself on a one-way ticket to hell. 6. Simony. We've all seen those late-night infomercials where they try to sell you some miracle cure-all for your ailments. But what if I told you that there was a way to buy your way out of hell itself? You might call it the ultimate scam. That's exactly what simony is. It's the act of selling or buying spiritual favors, usually involving things like prayers for personal gain, or even trying to purchase forgiveness for sins. Now, you might be thinking, come on, that sounds ridiculous. Who actually falls for this stuff? Well, surprisingly, a lot of people throughout history have been known to engage in simony, and it's not hard to see why. When push comes to shove, who wouldn't want to cut a deal with the devil himself? But let's be real here. Just because some people fall for this doesn't mean it's a smart idea. After all, we all know what happens to those who try to mess with the devil. They wind up in hell. So if you ever find yourself tempted to cut a deal with the devil, just remember that the only thing you'll be buying is a ticket to hell. 5. Apostasy. Let's face it, we've all been there before. You start off with the best of intentions, eager to follow the teachings of the Church and live a life of virtue and piety. But then life happens. You get caught up in the day-to-day grind, and before you know it, you're falling behind on your prayers, and your church attendance has become a distant memory. That's what apostasy is all about. It's basically abandoning or renouncing one's former beliefs, often leaving the faith altogether. Now, while it might be easy to dismiss it as just another case of someone going through a rough patch, the truth is that apostasy is taken very seriously in religious circles. After all, it's seen as a betrayal of the highest order, a rejection of everything the Church stands for. So if you happen to be struggling with your faith, it's probably best to keep it under wraps. Otherwise, you might just find yourself on Satan's bad side, and that's definitely a place you don't want to be. Number 4, usury. Imagine you're down on your luck, desperate for a loan to cover your mounting debts and put food on the table for your family. You approach a moneylender and strike a deal, but as the years pass, you realize that the interest rate he charged you was exorbitant, and now you're trapped in a cycle of debt that seems impossible to escape. Welcome to usury. Basically, charging excessive interest on loans, especially when dealing with vulnerable people who are desperate for financial help. Now, you might be thinking, who does that, right? But the truth is that usury has been around since the beginning of recorded history. Back in biblical times, it was considered such a grave sin that it was even outlawed. And let's face it, who could blame them? After all, taking advantage of someone's desperation is not exactly the kindest thing to do. But if you think that charging high interest rates was the worst of it, think again. The practice of usury was also closely linked to other sinful activities such as gambling and prostitution. In fact, many lenders were even known to use their loans as a way to finance these other ventures. So if you're ever approached by someone offering you a loan with an interest rate that seems too good to be true, it's probably best to steer clear. After all, you don't want to find yourself knee-deep in debt and entangled in a web of sin. 3. Murder. One of the most heinous crimes one could ever commit. Murder is an act so vile and despicable that it has been outlawed and punished by virtually every society throughout history. To take another person's life is not only a violation of the law, but a betrayal of the sanctity of life itself. The consequences of committing murder are severe and far-reaching, affecting not only the victim's family and friends, but society as a whole. The killer is often seen as a danger to others and is punished severely to protect the safety and well-being of the community. But what happens when a murderer finds themselves in the presence of the devil himself? Well, let's just say that it's not exactly a walk in the park. The Bible tells the story of Cain, who murdered his brother Abel out of jealousy and hatred. And as punishment, God cursed him to wander the earth as a fugitive for the rest of his days. Now, while that might not sound like the most pleasant of existences, it's actually a relatively light sentence compared to what awaits most murderers in hell. The fiery depths of hell are reserved for those who have committed the most heinous of sins, and murder is definitely up there at the top of the list. So if you're planning on taking someone's life anytime soon, just make sure you've made peace with the fact that you're signing your own ticket to hell. 2. Forgery. How many times have you been tempted to forge your friend's signature on a permission slip or forge a receipt for a much-needed item? Come on, be honest. Well, if you have, you already know that forgery is no laughing matter. It's the act of creating a fake document or signature with the intent to deceive. And it's been around since the dawn of civilization. Think about it. If you could easily forge documents like land deeds or currency, chaos would ensue. People could steal property, print counterfeit money, and commit all sorts of fraud with ease. And if you think that forgery is only a minor offense, think again. It's actually considered a serious crime in many countries, with penalties that include hefty fines and even prison time. But what about in hell? Well, let's just say that Satan has a zero-tolerance policy when it comes to forgery. After all, he's the original deceiver, and he takes any form of deception very seriously. So if you're ever caught trying to pull a fast one over on him, you can expect to be thrown into hell straight away. 1. Blasphemy. Last but certainly not least, we have blasphemy, the ultimate sin that will get you sent straight to hell. What exactly is blasphemy, you ask? Well, it's the act of speaking or acting in a way that shows disrespect or contempt towards something that is considered sacred or holy. In other words, it's basically saying the wrong things about the devil himself. Now, you might be thinking, oh, come on, how bad could it be? Surely he has a sense of humor. But let's be real here. When it comes to the devil, there's no such thing as a joke that goes too far. In fact, blasphemy is considered one of the most offensive things one could ever do, and it's punishable by eternal damnation in hell itself. Think about it. If people could speak freely against the devil and his followers, the entire hierarchy of hell would crumble. The only thing that keeps the peace in hell is the fear and reverence that everyone has for Lucifer himself. So if you're ever tempted to crack a blasphemous joke, just remember that the only thing you'll be laughing at is yourself. Well, folks, that's a look at 7 terrible things that will get you sent straight to hell. But before you go, we want to hear from you. Which of these sins do you think is the worst? And what do you think the punishment should be for each one? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Also, please don't forget to subscribe. We'd love to have you join our growing community. And, as always, thanks for watching.